Three things I saw. Dolphins, Chiefs. I think it's time to circle back on the Tua conversation. And I want to make this perfectly clear that this is not just because of his performance the other night. Yet, I'd rather paint a picture of the Tua Dolphins era and explain why I feel like it might be best for a divorce. And I want to center on the last 2 years because, well, the first 2 years of Tua are not important. The last 2 years, Tua has been good, not great. And his performance represents, for the most part, everything that everyone said was wrong with the Dolphins all year. They beat the small boys and they can't beat the big boys. I'm going to recycle this stat here just to paint the picture. The last 2 years against teams with a winning record, the Dolphins are 3-10. They're 1-10 in their last 11. Now, Tua did miss two of those losses midseason against Minnesota last year, and then, of course, the playoff game versus Buffalo. So Tua himself 1-8 in his last 9 games in that spot against teams with a winning record to that point. Well, why is that the case? It's simple, in my opinion, if you ask me. He's not a performance elevator. He does not elevate the performance of the team like other star quarterbacks. He's yet to show that he can take over a game and grasp it and run with it. The situation has to be perfect, which most of the time against the lower quality teams, it is. And if it's not, the Dolphins almost always have a disadvantage. And that's what went wrong on Saturday. Cold weather, everyone knew the situation, and almost nobody gave them a chance because everyone believed that Tua couldn't handle that type of spot. And guess what? Everyone was right. I don't want to hear the, well, he lost to Mahomes at Arrowhead argument. The Chiefs didn't even play great, and Lord knows they've had problems all year. I'll even go as far as saying that the Dolphins, with that specifically offensive performance the other night, would have lost to most, if not all, of the playoff teams in the field, depending on your opinion on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Dolphins' defense, which was clearly the biggest problem due to all the injuries going into the game, actually held their own. They weren't great down to down, but they left the Chiefs with plenty of field goals instead of touchdowns. They kept them in the game. The offense gave them absolutely no chance. 1 for 13 on third down is inexcusable from an offense led by a guy who almost always shrinks in the big moments. So I've said all these things so far. What do the Dolphins do, you might ask? Because if you're going to get rid of Tua, what do you do? Well, let's start with this. The Tua fans who explode on social media every time this guy has a good game. Fuck off. He's not special. He's not a winner. It's that simple. The Dolphins are going to be put in a spot this offseason where they have to make an organizational decision on whether or not they want to extend Tua. Because next year is his 5th-year option year. So he's only under contract for 1 more year. So if they were to extend him, they didn't last year, they still can this year. The answer is simple to me. Hell no. This is the future of the franchise made up of one decision. The trajectory that you want to take your franchise for the next half decade, it's coming off of this decision. Look at the Giants. Now, Tua is better than Daniel Jones, but neither of those guys are Super Bowl quarterbacks. Look what the Rams did with Goff. Goff is in the perfect spot right now and succeeding, but he's not a guy who anyone really takes that seriously when you look at guys like Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and hell, I'll even add Stroud to that. CJ Stroud. The Texans are drooling over the chance to have CJ Stroud for 15 years. There's no way in hell the Dolphins feel that confident in Tua. The solution and future of Tua is this. If he can find a spot like what the Dolphins did or Lions did with Goff, that's fine. He's better than a bridge quarterback. So was Goff, even though Goff was initially seen as a bridge for Detroit, but obviously that wasn't true. That's what Tua can be. There is no way that the Dolphins feel like they can extend Tua long term for real quarterback money and feel good about it. You can't even say he's coming off of a career year because he's not. He was just as good and bad as he was last year. He just played more games this year. The Dolphins are an organization that wants to win. They go for it. This isn't some cursed organization that no matter what move they make, it always fails. They haven't won a playoff game since 2000. Something's not right. The Dolphins traded Tannehill. He won 2 playoff games the following year. Baker Mayfield now has 2 playoff wins. CJ Stroud already has 1. Burrow has 5 in the same conference. There is no magic in the bottle run coming with Tua. I'm sorry. It's not happening, and they need to move on now before it gets too late. So I just threw the book at Tua, which means I'm going to have to do the same with Dak, right? Well, I'm not going to. I've been the biggest Dak defender for as long as I can remember. I didn't feel good about the game, nor have I during all of Dallas's playoff exits in the Dak Prescott era. But here's the deal. I think the organization has failed Dak Prescott, the quarterback. Going from Jason Garrett to Mike McCarthy, for starters, is best case scenario if you're filling out a bingo card that's titled, "How many coaches can I hire that will do nothing but lower my chances of winning once we get to January?" The McCarthy stuff is downright awful. It's so bad, the only way to put it. He has no idea what's going on when the lights come on, and you can see it every time this team plays in the playoffs. 3 straight years. They went 2 years without a playoff appearance, one of those due to Dak tearing his ACL in November of 2020, and then Mike McCarthy led them to back-to-back-to-back embarrassing playoff exits, 2 of them now coming at home. I couldn't tell you how this team beat a Tom Brady team in the playoffs last year, besides the fact that the Bucs were hobbled all year, had a horrible head coach, had a 44-year-old quarterback that never felt right that year. And by the way, Dak Prescott went on the road and had one of the best games of his career against a defense that carried that Tampa team. Now, I know I'm still finding my way to say good things about Dak, even though he played bad. The Cowboys played awful. There was no rapport with CJ Lamb, with CD Lamb, and the defense just couldn't do anything. They got picked apart by Jordan Love for 60 minutes. Now, this isn't all on Dak, and even if it was, what are they supposed to do? They've won 12 games in 3 straight seasons. They're the only team in the NFL that can say that, and they just have 1 playoff win. It's bad. The Dak McCarthy era, it has to be over. There is no way you can bring McCarthy back. And Cowboys fans, I know you're hurt, but the fact of the matter is that every year, the Cowboys always seem to have come into the playoffs with one glaring weakness, and it has never been the quarterback. This year, their running game down the stretch was non-existent, and yet Mike McCarthy felt the need to run the ball in clear passing situations when the game was still in reach. The defense, which was nails all year long, got ripped apart for 60 minutes by Jordan Love and a Packers team that nobody took seriously up until they beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. They went on this run with great quarterback play, and they exposed Dallas. I don't think it's a Dak problem. It's a Cowboys problem. Now, if for some circumstance they choose to get rid of Dak, good luck. Good luck, Dallas. That's not the solution that I would come to, and I don't think it's the solution that Dallas is going to come to. Now, I'm not defending Dak's performance in the playoffs for the last couple of years. I'm not. I wish it was better. But the Cowboys got exposed on Sunday, and I blame the head coach because, after all, it is a complete pattern with him. All right, let's move on. Eagles, Bucks. Here is my eulogy to one of my favorite teams ever. We're going to culminate and say goodbye to the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. The 10-1, always find a way, NFC champs, losing 6 of their last 7 and ending the season with a blowout loss to a 9-8 Tampa team that nobody, and I mean nobody, think are any good. They lose by 23 to the Niners, 20 to Dallas, lose to the Seahawks, Cardinals, Giants, and now they lose to Tampa to end their season. Always keep a cool head. This is a lesson for anybody that cashed their Eagles NFC futures when this team was 10-1. They hadn't played well, yet we're 10-1, but we're seen as this great team because they always found a way. I said on this show about 2 months ago that I didn't buy this team. Right after they squeaked by Dallas in week 9, they had not impressed me. I said that on this show, said they were getting lucky, they were fortunate with some bounces and had unbelievable fumble and penalty luck. And look what happened. It was one of the biggest collapses I've seen in some time. And they finished with a defense that was second to last in the NFL in EPA per play since week 12. Some type of historical collapse, right? Their offense never had even close to an identity since the middle of November. They had Matt Patricia calling plays on defense and a quarterback who had lost all confidence and was limping into the playoffs. When my entire timeline was full with this nonsense Eagles propaganda when they were 10-1, I had to put my head down and just wait. And then they proceeded to prove me right in a fashion not even I saw coming, which was crazy considering I was one of the only ones who came on a platform and said this team isn't legit when they were 10-1. They blew a multiple game division lead in the last month and were ceremoniously embarrassed by a bad Bucs team in the playoffs. The Bucs, 18th in defensive EPA per play, 13th in offense EPA per play for the whole season. This wasn't a good team by any metric, and they steamrolled the Eagles. It's fitting. What we all saw tonight, this was the looks of a defeated team, a team that had no hope, no will, nothing to play for, a team that looked like they had no business being there, clinging to the heels of a 10-1 start to the season. This is an impossible, unheard of collapse. You've got Eagles fans questioning all levels of the team. Ownership, the coaching for sure. That staff was awful all year, going through multiple defensive coordinators, an OC that the players lost all confidence in, and a head coach that, although coming off of a Super Bowl appearance last year, might not have much job security moving forward. It's that bad for Philly. They lost both coordinators last season, and it came back to bite them at the end of the year. They couldn't do anything right for a long period of time, too long of a time. So we'll see what happens. But this team, man, this was a collapse that lasted almost half the season, a historical spiraling torpedo that crashed into the ground and sent them to rock bottom. So what's the word on Jalen Hurts? What's the deal here? Look, he'll obviously come back. That's not the question. But is there any type of confidence that he can get back to a Super Bowl? Only Brady, Mahomes, Warner, and Manning have gone back to a Super Bowl after losing one in the last 30 years. Jalen Hurts is now with the likes of Drew Bledsoe, Kerry Collins, Rich Gannon, Donovan McNabb, Matt Hasselbeck, Rex Grossman, Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, Colin Kaepernick, Jared Goff, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, and many more quarterbacks to lose in a Super Bowl and never go back. It's a part of history that you do not want to be in. Welcome to the party, Jalen Hurts. And this is my final goodbye to one of my favorite teams ever, the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. All right, let's dissect. Super wild card weekend. Let's start with the first game that we didn't talk about. Houston steamrolls the Browns. Superb defense, putting old man Joe Flacco on his bum, and CJ Stroud having a pretty perfect game. 16 of 21, 274, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Cleveland had more first downs than Houston did, but Flacco never really got a rhythm. It's felt like the first half, there was a lot of points being scored. Well, there were. The game went over like pretty much right before halftime. But the Browns only had 14 points because they again, there was just never really a rhythm. Flacco's numbers: 34 for 46, 300 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, but those 2 picks were just super costly. Kareem Hunt, 8 carries, Ford, 9 carries. This was not the brand of football that Cleveland wanted to play. All the experts, and even myself, this was the game that I didn't really know, because I've been the guy amongst others who have wanted CJ Stroud to be good so bad. And CJ Stroud was part of 3 things I saw twice. We didn't do it the whole year, but out of the 8, 9, maybe 10, 3 things I saw, Stroud was there 2 or 3 times. I've been crazily impressed by his performance this year, yet I wasn't really sure. Jim Schwartz was coming in. Houston had such an emotional big win. Rookie quarterback, rookie head coach. They were up against the 8 ball when you consider long-term trends. And it didn't matter, because what CJ Stroud and this team did, they dominated them, and they looked like the better team. They looked like the team that had the elite quarterback. So that wasn't stopping them, because Stroud, time after time again, has proved that he is more than a rookie. He is not a rookie anymore. He's now played in multiple straight playoff-type games, and this one to cap it off, the win over Cleveland. And this Houston team, there were some bumps in the road all year. I mean, again, they did have a rookie and a quarterback and a rookie head coach, but they finished 10-7 in a competitive division, knocking off a Jacksonville team. They beat them once, lost to them again in a game that they probably should have won. But they knocked off a Jacksonville team that got a lot of love throughout the year, that had the a real path to the 1 seed in early December, and then completely collapsed. So Houston took advantage, and now they're riding all the momentum into a clash against the team that they faced in CJ Stroud's first game, the Baltimore Ravens. And that game, well, I guess we'll talk about it this week upcoming, but I'm hyped for it. If anyone can knock off the Ravens, I think CJ Stroud can. I don't know if he will. We'll talk about it with Harry throughout this week. But if I say one thing about this game, it's holy shit, CJ Stroud. Throw after throw after throw. The way that he's climbing the pocket behind an offensive line that was never concrete all year. There's some good players on there. Larry Tunsil did really well against Myles Garrett, but it wasn't an offensive line that you look at and be like, I have a lot of confidence that this ex-rookie quarterback is going to succeed behind. Because time after time again, we see rookie quarterbacks make good throws, show flashes, and this is what I said about Stroud during the season, but it never seemed to phase him. This offensive line was not a unit where you look at and go, I think he's going to be okay behind this line. Now, they played fantastic. They've played really well. But the way that CJ Stroud has played and done all these things is ridiculously impressive. And for Cleveland, It never really felt like their year. There was this magic with Joe Flacco, but I had a feeling it was going to end. I liked the matchup for Cleveland initially. Didn't really bet on this game. I took the over, but didn't really want to take a side. Didn't really want to bet against CJ, and never really felt sure on the Browns. And I'm glad that I stayed away because I didn't really force anything. And if I was a Cleveland bettor, I would have felt a little bit embarrassed. So I'm glad I didn't end up on that side. We got enough points to cash our over, and these Texans are humming into M&T Bank Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Texans back on the Saturday afternoon spot. It's a tale as old as time. Sunday night, I loved this game. For 60 minutes, it was magic. I absolutely loved it. I've been a little glam on the Lions all year. I felt like at times I've given them their props. The Chargers game was pretty fun, but the Lions never really felt like this dominating team, and that's why I was so heavy on Rams plus 3.5. And the Rams were not in control, but they definitely gave away some opportunities to win. Way too many red zone field goals, and that was the dagger. That was the killer. They lose by 1. Lions get a couple of first downs that they need on the last drive. Goff, 22 of 27, 227, 10 yards a pop, 1 touchdown, no picks. The Lions didn't have any offense in the second half. They only scored 3 points. That's where the Rams really could have taken advantage, and it really felt like a non-Sean McVay team in that second half. Because if you told me the Lions were only going to score 3 points in the second half, I'd have been like, the Rams blew them out, right? Like they have to. The Rams were moving it effortlessly most of the game, but the Lions defense, which has been awful against the pass for most of the year, has quietly been really good in the red zone. And Collinsworth did a great job breaking that down and explaining that, yeah, their best players on defense are their linebackers because they're so good at tackling coming downhill. So when you're actually in the red zone, there's not that much space because you got to throw through a lot of guys. The windows are smaller. So this red zone defense has been an untold story in the league that won them a playoff game. It wasn't Dan Campbell, wasn't Jared Goff, wasn't the secondary. It was this red zone defense that, yeah, you could say it's a little bit fluky because red zone defense is very high variance year to year. But in a 1-game sample, that's all you need in the playoffs. The red zone defense came to play, and they got it done for the Lions. And so happy for the Lions fans. Look, the Lions have lost me a lot of money this year, so hats off to them. Tip of the cap. I constantly have faded them. I know I won money on this game. I had the Rams plus 3.5, but time after time again, I faded the Lions, and it bit me in the butt. So hats off to them. I wish every cursed franchise can have this moment that they've been waiting for their whole lives, except the Cleveland Browns. So good for the Lions. They will now host Tampa. That'll be fun. Obviously, I talked about that game already, but I guess I didn't give Baker his props. I've always been a little bit bullish on Baker. Never really had a take on him. I wasn't Colin Cowherd and said he's going to fail, but he went to Cleveland number 1 overall. There was no roster there. It was surprising that they actually won 1 playoff game in a year that everything kind of went right. They won a wildcard game in the COVID year, and that was it for the Baker Mayfield era. That was it. So the Browns get back to the playoffs. Baker Mayfield gets back with a Tampa team that before the year no one thought was any good, and I don't really think that they were a good team, but Baker for sure played his tail off. If obviously I don't want to get into the comeback player of the year or DeMar Hamlin played 7 snaps. I don't care about that. But in a year where someone didn't die and come back to life, Baker Mayfield would win comeback player of the year. He was amongst all the players that I want to put this lightly. I don't want to disrespect any DeMar Hamlin, anything out there. But out of all the players that either got injured or were written off or whatever, Baker Mayfield reigned supreme, and he literally revitalized his career. So props to him. All the front office for Tampa. I still don't even know how they did it with Todd Bowles. I don't think anyone thinks Todd Bowles is like a good head coach, but they won a playoff game. They're 10-8 right now. They win a terrible division. They were like the last team standing in a circus of division, a circus of an NFC South. But good for Tampa. They get a home playoff win after losing Tom Brady. They win a playoff game the next year. That's really hard to do. That is impressive. And they beat a team that everyone thought was going to win the NFC 8 weeks ago. So good for them. But yeah, dominating performance from Tampa for the whole game. Like the first drive, you can tell, okay, this Eagles team, they didn't come to play. And Tampa took advantage of that. So props to them. Lastly, Bills, Steelers. I have Bills futures. They won. I'm happy. That's really about it. We're gonna do some offseason stuff, probably with Harry. Some where does this team go next? Because I already teased at it with Tua and the Dolphins. I think that Browns are interesting, and there's a who's who of non-playoff teams that could go that definitely will have a new quarterback. But I think Pittsburgh's one of them because they still have Pickett for cheap, but I could see them going after a Ryan Tannehill in free agency to give Kenny Pickett some competition. Because do they really have a reason to feel good about Kenny Pickett, even if they find the solution to the OC and fix the offensive line for real and make George Pickens and Deontay Johnson happy? I don't really know. Finally realized that Jalen Warren's the better running back than Najee Harris. There's a whole angle with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. It doesn't really feel real that he's going to leave. But again, on the same day, Saban, Belichick, Carroll all left. All either got fired or parted ways. We'll be nice and say they all parted ways, right? Definitely not. Oh, Saban definitely did. He retired. But Carroll and Belichick definitely parted ways instead of having a huge drop-off in performance the last 3 years and needed the team to go in a different direction. But we won't talk about that. But I think there is a really interesting angle for Pittsburgh for Pickett and the quarterback position. But Tomlin gets it done, man. And that's why Pittsburgh fans hope he never leaves. Because even when you have this team that wasn't any good, they got outgained in 80% of their games. And they still managed to win not just a winning season, but win double-digit games in the best division in American football, by far. For real. So that was really impressive. And their defense, was good. But it wasn't this star-studded, nose-eating defense that dominated teams. They gave up 30 points to the Patriots or however many it was. So this wasn't a defense that dominated all year, but they were good enough to have the rah-rah Mike Tomlin magic and get it done in the playoffs. And for the Bills, they got it done. They forced some turnovers and really avoided any big rah-rah stuff. The blocked field goal wasn't fun, but we're in control. 400 total yards of offense. They were moving. Wasn't like a great Bills performance, but got it done. It was kind of like a mini bye. I don't want to say it was a bye in the playoffs, but it kind of felt like that with the spread and everything being as high as it was, the game being moved, all that stuff. So that the Bills will be at a 2-day rest disadvantage. I know they're playing on Sunday, so they have 5 days of rest. The Chiefs have 7 full days of rest. So 2 days of a rest disadvantage. Bills open as a favorite against KC. We'll see if it matters. Lots of injuries for the Bills that I guess we'll talk about later in the week. But a couple more players went down. Gabe Davis didn't play. Rasul Douglas didn't play. Rasul Douglas, by the way, has been amazing for them since he came. They had all those injuries. In the middle of the year, their play fell off, and then they got some of those players back. Von Miller came back, and then the backups were actually playing really well. So that's kind of where this whole Bills run came from, because their offense hasn't been better than it was before Joe Brady took over. It's been stagnant. It's been good. It's been a top 10 offense, but it hasn't hit these reach heights that you would look at and see, oh, this is why they're on a 6-game winning streak now. And this is why they went on this huge run to win the division, backdoor their way into a 2 seed, and now host 2 playoff games. So there's all that going on, but the defense has played extremely well. They can run the ball for real. So watch out, because that's the Chiefs defense where you can expose them a little bit. Dolphins didn't. So look out for that in Bills Chiefs. I dream of a matchup, right? Bills Chiefs. Yes, we get it again after not getting it last year. So we get it Bills Chiefs again. Bills get to host this time. It'll be fun. But the Bills get it done against Pittsburgh. We'll have another JSP sometime later in the week with bets, previewing all the angles, manifesto, all this stuff. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been the Jake Sirkus Podcast. We'll catch you next time.